On today's podcast, we're happy to have music marketing expert Amber Horsburgh. Amber is one of the leading experts in this area. So much great information that you're going to get. How to market your music today, understanding the kinds of content you need, what are the things you need to be prepared to do, how long should a campaign be, understanding usage of social media, understanding the relevance of YouTube, all these things and much, much more that we talk about. Insiders, are you ready? Welcome to MUBUTV's Insider Podcast, where our mission is to educate, empower, and engage artists and music business professionals who are dedicated to having a successful career in the new music industry. Here are your hosts, Ritch, Esra, and Eric Knight.
Welcome back, Insiders, to another episode of the MUBUTV Insider Podcast, where our mission is to educate, empower, and engage your music career. On today's episode, we're with leading music marketing expert Amber Horsburgh, who discusses everything you need to know about marketing in this new era, including all of the content needs, partnerships, collaborations, effectively utilizing social media platforms, utilizing YouTube, and much, much more. You won't want to miss it. But first, a quick word from our sponsor. Hey, Insiders, are you looking to take your music career to the next level? Then you need to know about the Music Business Registry. The Music Business Registry is the leading music industry publisher of the most up-to-date contact information for major and independent record label A&R, music publishers, artist managers, music attorneys, music supervisors, and much, much more. The Music Business Registry is the trusted industry standard and source, serving the music business community for over 28 years with the most accurate and up-to-date contact information available. Their titles include the A&R Registry, the Film and Television Music Monthly, the Music Publisher Registry, and the Music Attorney Registry. All of their publications are available in print, PDF, CSV, or online subscription. Visit them now at musicregistry.com and receive a 10% discount by using coupon code MUBUTV10 at checkout. That's musicregistry.com, coupon code MUBUTV10. When you're ready to put your music to work, musicregistry.com.
Welcome back, Insiders. Today's featured interview is with Amber Horsburgh. This was an incredibly insightful, deep dive into modern-day marketing techniques, and I think you're really going to find it valuable. A lot of great, insightful stuff on the things you need to know about presenting music, things that you probably have never even thought of around things like the content, around personal narrative, around the value of YouTube, and all of these different components regarding social media, etc. Really, really valuable stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Amber is one of the brightest in the game, as we both know. And for you guys that are not members of her newsletter, you definitely should sign up for her newsletter. Really, really forward-thinking news and info about the music industry today.
And cutting edge.
Absolutely. So, Insiders, sit back, relax, and enjoy our featured interview with Amber Horsburgh.
Amber, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it.
No, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
You know, I want to start out with you with a statement and see if this is something within the realm of what you do in terms of marketing that you agree with or disagree with, and, you can expand either way. Is it fair to say that today the most valuable commodity in marketing music is not money, power, or market share, but something far more fundamental? It's the ability to get people's attention.
Yeah, I would say I don't know if you can weight them in terms of like power and money and all of that, but I do think that the difference now in marketing artists versus maybe 10 years ago, when there was less ability to distribute music and promote yourself and less direct to consumer platforms and stuff, is you're not so much competing now with other musicians and other like music headlines and new releases, but it's more so the attention of everything, because you're, say, like, if you look at the most powerful music discovery platforms, it's, YouTube and Instagram, where those two things aren't exclusively music. You're competing with celebrity news, you're competing with politics, what happens in like the actual, world events and news, and then also everything else and friends. So I think absolutely the artist's ability to capture attention is really important, because you're competing more as opposed to, say, 10 years ago when music blogs were a primary source of music discovery, you're really competing against other musicians and other labels for, share of headlines in, say, Pitchfork or NME or Rolling Stone. So I would definitely say, yes, it's very important. I don't know if I could say it's more important than like power and money as well, but definitely important.
Hi, Amber. This is Eric. Thanks so much for joining us. I wanted to ask you, I think it's fair to say that we've been going through a radical revolution in the music business for over 15 years, and it doesn't seem to be subsiding. The major force driving so much of this disruption was the shift from the copy model of CDs to an access model like Spotify's streaming. As someone who is on the front lines of marketing music and recording artists today, what are the biggest mistakes you see artists and labels making today?
I think not investing enough in content. I think a lot of people spend a lot of money on, say, music videos, album artwork, photo shoots. It's not uncommon for music videos to be in hundreds of thousands of dollars. But I think the way that people consume content, and not just music content, but all content, is on social and on mobile, which means that you need to tell the same story and you need to promote the same track over and over and over again. So you need to find new hooks into it. And the way that you do that is by creating different pieces of content around that, and then also spending against that to make it seen. Whereas I think a lot of the mistakes people have is they'll play it safe, where they'll go, okay, we've got a content budget, we have a single that we're promoting, let's make a really, really sick music video, and then hopefully that will lead it. But, then they'll be promoting that same single for months and months, and they only have one piece of content to do that with. I think that's the biggest problem.
So it seems like, the values and the criteria of what you need to market today have totally changed from just 5-6 years ago.
I would say so. Yeah, I definitely think so. I've got a newsletter coming out this week, which was taking Mary Meeker's Internet Trends Report and kind of reshifting it for the music business. And what she found in her Internet Trends Report, which is kind of, a really important document for all of Silicon Valley, is that mobile is the biggest way that people use and use the internet, and is continuing to grow so. And then it is through social media platforms that people discover and find content as well. And so, but a lot of the times what labels think of is music videos and YouTube, and just like put it up on YouTube and see what happens, or hope it works, or hope that it picks up on press. But if you really think about it, if people are using the internet through mobile and through social media, you need to be creating content that fuels that. And social media rewards frequency of like using the platform. So playing into those like natural behaviors that are inherent to social platforms that work not just across music, but across like all the different interest verticals that work so well on them, I think is really, really key. So yeah, the criteria for content and for, I guess, a marketing plan has probably shifted, say, since like 6 years ago, where blogs and music blogs and music sites were the ones that were really, really powerful, where now it's like social media content playlisting.
It's interesting hearing you say that, because, in that period, streaming came into full bloom. Spotify came into America in 2011. And I'm curious, from your point of view, how has streaming altered what artists can and can't break in today's marketplace? Did you feel that that's true?
Do you mean what type of artist can break and what type of artist can't break in streaming?
Yes. Has it altered, what artists can or can't break, the type of artists that can or can't break within the marketplace?
I think definitely. I think you look at the top genres on streaming is rap, and like rap, hip hop, and pop. And that's now true in the mainstream, given that rap's the most dominant genre. And I think streaming definitely was, molded that. And then you look at other artists who say, and the thing that pop and rap have in common is the ability to produce music all the time, and be far more singles driven than, say, album formats. Whereas you look at artists that are more driven by albums, so like your rock, indie rock, metal, blues, all of that is, less popular. And you just look at the share of playlists that are on the platform, or the amount of followers that are in those particular genre platforms it speaks pretty clearly about which is more popular on streaming sites, and then that impacts the mainstream interest in music as well.
Okay. I want to ask you, I want to sort of get into the heart of, what you do. For new and emerging artists, can you talk about how important an artist's personal narrative is when developing their marketing plans? I think of Billie Eilish, I think of Cardi B, I think of, some of the horrific things that happened to Ariana Grande in the last 2 years with, the terrorist attack and all those people dying and, her breakup and writing about that. How important is that from your perspective when you're developing the marketing plans? Do you think that that's an important element that you need to incorporate when you're starting your work with an artist?
Yeah, definitely. And I think for what I do too, I always work with artists I hope to always work with artists that have a narrative and have a strong sense of what they want as well, because I think teams around artists are there to do exactly that, which is help them develop and bring to life, bring to fruition what their goals are and what they want to actually put out into the world, rather than I don't think you can work with an artist who say doesn't have a personal narrative and then you hand down something for them to talk about, because people can really sniff that out very, very quickly. And then if we go back to the fact that social media is so important, and that's the way that people not only it's the social proof that people look to when they're discovering new artists, like, oh, do people follow this this artist is aesthetically, is this in line with who I'm about or what I like? And then also it's the main method that people interact with artists as well. And so, and then they get social platforms reward real people and real human connections, not overly art directed content that's, say, far removed from the artist. So the artist doesn't have a narrative that's real to them, and something that they feel comfortable talking about all the time, then it's just it won't stick, and then it's very, very difficult to be on the working for the artist to be able to give that to them. I don't think you can do that in today's environment.
And continuing down that path, and what we were speaking to earlier with regards to content, is there a specific set or checklist of content needs that artists need to be aware of, whether it's in social media and content creation?
Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Well, because I think it's an important point that you were talking about earlier when you were speaking about where there was one piece of content, and that's what they're kind of using with mobile being such an important part of how people are consuming content now. And so I guess, is there a checklist that you think of in terms of when you're working with an artist of what they need to have as far as, different needs to serve different things, whether it's a piece for Twitter? I mean, obviously each artist works on their own individual platforms. Not everybody's on every single platform. So I'm just wondering if there's a specific set or checklist of content needs that artists should be aware of when it comes to, social media content creation.
Got it. Yeah, I think an artist is going to be in a really good position if they've got somebody on their team that can capture video, and also a graphic designer to make sure that things look consistent and look professional. I think that the two most important platforms right now is Instagram and YouTube, as I said before, because they're the two that are growing, and whereas everything else is kind of on the either plateauing or declining. And they're also global as well. And so I think that an artist checklist, or if an artist in 2019 wanted to be competitive today, making sure that they can post video content to Instagram stories at least once a day, and then to YouTube once a week, if not every second week, I think is really crucial. And then that can be a mix of official music videos and official promotional messages like tour diaries and all that kind of stuff, as well as some kind of vlog, or it's such an unsexy word, but some kind of behind the scenes personality piece that is ongoing, that's programmed out. And then also content partnerships that allow them to extend across different verticals.
Collaboration videos and stuff like that.
Yeah, collaboration videos, anything on camera with press, like, Complex's sneaker shopping series
Right.
or Refinery 29 or anything like that. And then also content pieces with other influencers, whether or not that is in like the food space or the fitness space or nonprofit, whatever the artist is interested in, so that you can cross promote to each channel. But I think that video, like in terms of a checklist, it would almost be like a staffing checklist. Like, can you have somebody that's either, say you're in a band, can somebody in the band know how to capture good video and be able to put that out? Or can you hire someone that is really good at video?
Exactly.
Because I think they're the people that will stand out.
Let me ask you, staying on the content element for a minute, how much content do you feel, Ember, should be created in advance versus on the fly while the campaign is running?
I mean, in the perfect scenario, and I'm still yet to kind of do this, but like have everything done so that when release week hits, it's just like pressing play. But I think that you need, at the very least, before you start a campaign, you need to have the main hero pieces that define the visual brand and the creative direction going, because the worst thing you can do is start with one visual direction and then you make a cool video that you're like, oh, let's just do this all the time. And then it changes and then it's really inconsistent and directionless. And it makes it really hard for teams, whether or not they're at the label or management or agent or wherever they are and wherever they come into the campaign, to align and enhance. So I think in terms of the hero pieces, having the music video shot for the main singles that you're going to be promoting, having obviously the album artwork and the official press photos done, social skins done, and then any kind of ancillary content. I think that when I work with artists, I try to get them onto a YouTube series I did before anything comes out, so you can shoot like 4 or 5 videos and have them in the back pocket scheduled out, so that when you do get really busy, or say when the artist goes on tour and there isn't enough time to do stuff, you can have them ready to go. But I think whatever creative idea anchors their campaign in, all of that needs to be created before you go, because otherwise you risk moving, like pivoting, changing course, and then kind of like losing all direction.
This next one is kind of near and dear to my heart because I'm very, very into this, and I don't see enough people doing this. And it's something that you've written about, that, today one of the most under-leveraged and misunderstood music marketing tools by labels and artists is YouTube. And I want to ask you, why is that? Because
it monetizes at the worst rate. So I think that I think it's twofold. I think no one really very few teams pay attention to it because they don't get paid enough from it. And then also it's always thought of as this video repository, kind of like a hangover from MTV days, where you would create or you'd make a really flashy music video and then you've just got to house it somewhere. So you house it on YouTube. Whereas a lot of I think the discovery, YouTube is such an important tool for discovery. It's the first place that people go to search for music because it's the biggest engine. It's also the first place that people go to when they discover a song on a Spotify playlist. So if you think of that journey, you've got, and there's also a gajillion people on it as well. It's so big and it's global. And so if you think about, if you can fuel that engine by releasing content, then you're going to start at a frequent rate. You're going to start getting the algorithm working for you, and that's just a huge, huge volume of people that the machine can push towards your music. And then I think also it's a much better environment to discover a new artist on than, say, a playlist, because it has the social element. So you get the social proof in the comments and the community section.
Absolutely. And you have YouTube Live now. You can go live. You have super chats now. I mean, there's so many things that they're developing for artists, that I think that are tailor-made for them. Yeah,
definitely. And then if you think of the human's memory recall, our visual memory is far more powerful than our auditory memory. And Absolutely. So if you see something, and that's what YouTube allows as opposed to a song in a playlist, then the ability to recall the ability to hook, like actually make a connection with the artist, but also recall the artist is going to be far more powerful than trying to hit them on playlists as well. But it's a shame because I think it's under leveraged because it doesn't monetize at the right rate. And then also it costs a lot of money to perform there because you've got to create video, which means that you got to have someone on your team knowing what they're doing rather than, when you commission a music video and you have a big team that can create something really beautiful, but you don't necessarily, a lot of teams aren't configured that way to create stuff on a weekly or bi-weekly basis.
Amber, it's interesting hearing you talk about this in terms of the platforms, because one of the questions that comes to mind as I'm listening to you is trying to understand, do you think it's important from a marketing perspective to understand the unique strengths and culture of the social media platform that you are choosing to use? Like you and Eric were talking about YouTube and all of the offshoots. You mentioned before, Facebook or this one or Twitter, or you mentioned Instagram and so forth. Is that an important factor?
Yeah, totally. It is because you got to understand the audience that you're talking to, and then you also have to understand the strengths of the artist that you're working with as well. So if you have an artist who's, say, quite mysterious or then having them, live on Instagram or even YouTube Live isn't going to make sense for their brand. But if you have an artist that's global, or say like a Blackpink, then YouTube's obviously really, really important to cross over borders. So I think having a nuanced understanding of the specific platform behaviors help when you're creating content and making content strategy help be more successful on that platform, but also understanding the audiences that are there and the audiences that speak to the artist. Like if you have a younger audience, then TikTok and Triller is going to be more important to you than, say, a Facebook. And so I think having an understanding of the audience, then also the way that content performs on those sites, it only sets you up to be more successful. So yeah, I think it's definitely very important.
Absolutely. Let me ask you, there's been a lot of talk around providing context to an artist's music today, especially when it comes to the idea of pitching it to playlist. Can you speak to this?
Do you mean like when you go into meetings with like Spotify curators and you're trying to get songs onto playlist?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I think that Spotify, Apple, Amazon, any of the DSPs, they're trying to keep up with what is happening in culture, like that, they want to invest in the artists that they are supporting from the beginning, but more so they're really reflecting what's happening in culture. And so that's when you see, like when it's Pride, that's why Pride Month, that's why there's always like a bunch of Pride playlists on, or when it's Black History Month, there's Black History playlists on. Like it's reflecting what is going on in the real world. And so if an artist is having a huge moment online, say it's a Lil Nas X that's blowing up on Twitter first, not say a DSP, they need to be on top of that as well, because they're only they're then leveraging interest in what's going on in the world, which is going to help keep people on their site. And so providing the artist context is like, if you have an artist that they're having a moment, say on YouTube, there's a video that's going really well, or the song's just gone to radio, or it's charting or whatever, they might not necessarily know that already because they're listening to 40,000 tracks a day, I think wasn't the last statistic. There's 40,000 tracks a day being uploaded or something. Yeah. But so providing an artist context allows them to stay up with what's going on in the real world. And so that's really important. So it's not just like going in and playing the record to some curators before release week and then just, check, we've done that. It's constantly going back with, this is why it's working in the real world. This is, these are the things that we've performed on TV, yada, 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 helps get the DSP, like the DSP support in the track.
Hey Insiders, we hope that you've been enjoying our featured interview. Stay tuned because we've got so much more value coming your way. But before we dive back in, a word from our sponsor. Hey Ritch, you're the founder, CEO, legend of Music Business Registry. Tell us what the Music Business Registry is all about.
Well, what it's about, Eric, is it's a company that is designed to provide the most accurate and up-to-date contact information for the music business. So if someone is looking to reach the A&R community, if someone is looking to reach music publishers, if someone needs to reach artist managers, if someone needs to reach music attorneys, if someone's looking to place their music into film and television and needs to reach all the music supervisors, that's the contact information that we provide. We've been doing it for 28 years. We're sort of the industry standard, if you will, for the music business, and have been serving them since 1992. So that's what we do.
Amazing. So if I wanted to find out, let's say A&R people from Warner Brothers, let's say, I can just go in there and find that in the A&R registry?
Absolutely. You'll find all of the Warner Brothers in there. You'll find the Warner Brothers in LA, Warner Brothers in New York, Warner Brothers in Nashville, Warner Brothers in London, Warner Brothers, probably in Australia as well. So those are the main territories that we cover.
Amazing. And we're offering all of our insiders right now that are listening, if you visit musicregistry.com and use coupon code MUBUTV10 at checkout, you'll get a 10% discount off your first order. That's musicregistry.com, coupon code MUBUTV10. Anything else you want to say, Ritch?
Well, when you're ready to put your music to work, musicregistry.com. I want to ask you, just going down this road a little further, one of your most interesting articles was entitled Playing to Strangers, Why Marketing to Folks Who Haven't Heard Your Music Are Most Profitable. Can you talk about the inspiration for that piece? Because I found it to be so counterintuitive, and yet, the points you made were just brilliant. And so can you speak to how you sort of came to understand that and then to write that piece?
Yeah, sure. So there's a marketing scientist called Byron Sharp, who's an Adelaide professor from Australia, and he wrote a book called How Brands Grow, which is my favorite marketing book kind of ever. But what he did was he analyzed grocery store brands, and he looked at purchasing patterns of grocery store brands, and he found that people that bought, say, deodorant at the top of the year, only 20% of those people were still buying deodorant at the end of the year. And so that started this idea that in order for brands to grow, you need to be going after people, constantly going after new customers, because you can't rely on loyalty to continue to move units for your product. And so I started thinking about kind of his work and in the context of music, because a lot of the times people all point to the 1,000 True Fans right. idea, yep. Which is but actually, so I just wanted to look at the same thing, because I think it's the same thing with music. Is so trends based. Like what we're interested. If you look at the Coachella lineup from 2009 versus 2019, like the genres are totally different. Like Beirut was headlining and it was like all indie rock, and this year it was a collection of like Latin. I mean, that wasn't the dominant, but it was like Latin. There was Korean. It was mainly hip hop and pop, and some dance. And so. If you were to, if we think about artists as brands and fan loyalty, fans also grow out of music too. Like the same ones that are buying tickets to festivals and going to all the club shows probably aren't going 10 years later either. So if you're an artist and you're a career artist, you're in this for 30, 40 years or beyond, you need to be constantly adding new fans to the pipeline. And so that's why I wrote the piece. And then I basically looked at Spotify and looked at the monthly listeners versus the followers, just to look at loyalty, and found that it was roughly about 10% of artists' fan base, actually, like monthly listenership, were followers, which was really interesting to me, because, and then if that was for the emerging level artists, and then if you look at kind of the more established artists, so like Cardi B, for example, it would be around 20%. And then that fluctuated whether or not the artist was like on cycle or if they were off cycle, because, they got more playlisting if they're on cycle. But what was interesting to me about that was that when you become more established, your loyalty almost increases, which is counterintuitive a lot of the times to when people really think that the really vocal, like, core fan base is there with you from the start and they're really loyal at the beginning. But I didn't find it to be the case, and which is actually pretty consistent with Byron Sharp's findings. He found that brand loyalty actually grows with market share. So Nike has more loyal followers than a startup sneaker brand just by fact that they're a lot bigger. So I guess, sorry, that was really long-winded, but
That's fascinating.
I believe that if you're an artist and you're in this for the long haul, you need to be constantly adding new fans to your pipeline, not only to your
existing base,
fan base. Yeah, because you're going to be a victim of trends, and so you need to be going for either people that are in the trend right now or going for new ones, and then also new fans that are going to be buying into your business as well. Because if you're going to go for 24-year-olds to buy tickets to something, and then 15 years later they don't going, that same fan still likes your music, but maybe hasn't bought an album or hasn't gone to a show in a while because that's not how they spend their free time, then you're going to see your revenue dwindling anyway. So
right, or they've aged out, they've grown up, they've gotten married and have kids, and life just takes over.
Yeah, exactly. So then I think your marketing has to kind of speak to that, which is new music discovery all the time.
Absolutely. Let me ask you, Amber, when you're hired by a label or an artist to be a marketing consultant for them, how do you determine or identify who their audience is? A
couple of things. So my process is I start with the kickoff meeting with the artist and the manager or the label or whoever the team is. And I generally start with the artist because they more than likely have the best idea of who their fan is. So I'll ask them questions like, who are the people that go to your shows? Who talks to you the most online? Who do you think your audience is? Is there anyone that you think should be listening to your music that isn't listening to your music right now? And I take that information and I just kind of match that with their analytics of across their socials and streaming and website and merch as well, anything that I can really get my hands on. And then I look at kind of the audience opportunities. So if an artist is, maybe it's a dance artist, but they have a lot of rappers that feature on their music, then maybe there's more crossover to like urban audiences that might make sense. But it's a combination of asking them and then looking at their business and then looking at culturally and trend reports as well, like who's spending money on music right now and where are those opportunities to grow.
Interesting.
I just want to go back to something, Amber, that you mentioned before, and what you were just saying sort of triggered it is, can you speak to the value of the right collaborations and partnerships? You had touched on that before, but I think that's a really important point in terms of, identifying your audience and the marketing element. And I don't hear a lot of people talking about that.
Yeah, I think partnerships are really, really important, not only for co-signs and to associate yourself with particular artists, but also that is the ticket to pop success on streaming services. Like if you look at today's top hits right now on Spotify, I don't have it up, but the last time I went on it, there was like 60% of the tracks on there were collaborations. So like multiple artists on the same track.
Wow, okay.
It was a lot. So it's definitely like, the behavior of now. But it's also a way that can like push open doors. So I worked on this artist called Miramasa, who's a really talented producer artist based out of the UK. And he was trying to crack the US for quite some time, had this great record coming out, and he put A$AP Rocky on one of the tracks. And the track was many years old by the time that he put it on. But that allowed him to get onto urban radio in the States, and that kind of blew his profile wide open over here. Whereas before his strategy was to go for dance radio and position himself as dance. And I mean, he still is dance. But that was just through that one collaboration that was able to, kick down doors and allow him to just scale up in a new territory. And I think that collaboration is an example of one that's very successful. I think the collaborations that work well is when there's a lot of natural audience crossover, and it doesn't need to be within the same genre, but just like the same type of consumer listens to, both artists. So there's lots of crossover. I mean, a good tour support slot will do that if it's well positioned. And then same with, features and remixes as well. But I think right now, like, collaborations is a huge tool for marketing artists, and one that's very effective.
Absolutely. Amber, let me ask you, how long should an artist or label continue to keep putting content out? This is an interesting question because, in this kind of environment that we're at, where there's this constant stream, we're getting bombarded from everywhere. I mean, is there a finite point where the artist needs to kind of take a step back in putting out content, or it just should be a continuous stream?
As depressing as this is, I think it needs to be a continuous stream, especially if you're building an artist brand. Like, if you go away and if you are an artist that is like, I'm on cycle and I'll be really active every day while I'm on cycle, and I'm just going to go away for 18 months and write a record, and then I'll be back. And I'll be back 2 years later. That you are really building from the bottom up again. And so I think you have to stoke that fire if you're building up your artist, if an artist is building a brand and a career. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to always be putting out music, but getting on other people's music, appearing in other people's videos, writing op-eds in the press, doing adjacent projects, maybe art projects, like anything that you can continue to keep building, I think is absolutely critical.
I agree.
Amber, you have such knowledge and background in terms of your own career, working with artists, working in marketing, and such a strong grasp of the contemporary marketplaces that exist today. And I'm just curious if I can ask you a personal question. What have your biggest mistakes taught you?
I think this is something, I listened to this podcast, I can't remember which one it was, but this person said to me, like, I was listening to a podcast that they broadcast out to many, many people. It wasn't just singly to me, but it really spoke to me because they said that if you get worried about what people think, it's actually really only 6 people that you care about that of those opinions. So if you write out those 6 people that you think are watching, that are judging you, and you're just more aware of that, I did that, and it just really, like, it allowed me to, it showed me how stupid it was, and how those people's opinions I really actually don't really care about for whatever reason. And so I think that allows me to just like keep going. And the fact that no one is really watching either. So if you think you're making a big mistake, it's a really big mistake to you, but no one really cares because everyone's only really thinking about themselves all the time. I think that's the biggest thing, because I would always, I still do this where I either like don't want to put something out, or I don't want to go after a particular client, or I don't want to put a particular idea into the world, or propose something to an artist, and that'll stop me because I'll be like, oh no, I'm not really confident in it. But then I just realize I'm like, actually, you just kind of got to do it. And the worst thing you can do is not do anything. So, yeah.
Right, just not participate or do anything at all.
Absolutely.
That's so true.
Let me ask you, Amber, you alluded to the marketing book by that gentleman in Australia. Are there any other specific books, videos, or any other pieces of media that you would recommend artists should be reading or watching to educate themselves?
Yes, I would say to educate themselves. I did this thing called, it's a book, but it's kind of a course, The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. And I did that last year, and it's like she just gives you 12 weeks of activities to do, and it's really fun to do. But it also allows you to kind of organize your thoughts and your goals and what you want to do, and yada, yada, yada. And it's definitely more spiritual than I usually am. I'm not really a spiritual person. But if you can put that aside, it is really, really value for just kind of streamlining and focusing. So I would definitely recommend The Artist's Way. Made to Stick is a good one. Feel like everyone always recommends that. Book. I would also suggest using Twitter, like creating a private Twitter and just following smart people on that talk about the things that you're interested in, whether or not it's like video directors or like photographers, art directors that you really like their style, marketers, producers, music industry, like kind of create that and set up a tweet deck where that's all that information's organized, so you can kind of dip in and out of it and it's not competing with your own stuff. That's kind of how I do it.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
I want to sort of continue on that same line of thought with you, Amber, and ask, for those who are committed to having a career in music marketing like yourself, what advice do you have for them?
I get asked this question quite a lot, especially from people who either want to get into like either work at labels or students as well. I think the most valuable thing that you can do is put your opinion out there online, writing like blog posts or creating a podcast or creating a video series on YouTube or Instagram or whatever it is, because I think that a lot of people go to really great schools and have really good experience and work at the right places. But if you can have an actual perspective on marketing, this is the thing that that students or people that want to get into the music business make the mistake. They always get into it because they're really passionate about music or they love music. Whereas I feel like, passion for music is kind of the lowest rung on the ladder. Like everybody that works in music because they like music. Like, no, I've never met anyone that is like, oh, well, I actually wanted to get into finance, but just kind of ended up working at this label.
Right.
Like everyone
Right.
starts with a passion. So you don't lead with a passion and don't lead with your own taste in music, because you probably have really great and sophisticated taste. Unless you're an A&R, I guess that's really crucial. But if you're marketing, lead with, like, these are my opinions of marketing. These are the theories that I think apply to the music industry or artists or brands. This is how I approach it, and show your like chops that way. And the easiest way to do that is like writing a newsletter, creating a blog post, making a podcast, like whatever it is. But lead with marketing and your own POV, not like I love music.
Right.
Okay, great.
And flipping that around for artists looking to have a career in music, what advice would you have for them?
I think you just got to start. You have to just start and back yourself and try and educate yourselves on the things that you like to do. So say if a lot of artists I've worked with have gone to school for film and they really love film. And so that ends up making them want to direct their own music videos and create more like video stuff. And I would say, like, if that is you do music, but you also went to film, like keep pursuing the film and piece of it and apply that to your business. And so like whatever you've got your music thing, but you've got your other, either content creation or marketing element or, whatever else it is, like keep focusing on that too and make those strengths even stronger, because that will help just build your business.
Amber, I want to ask you, where can people best connect with you? I mean, you have a company, you do marketing. Where, a lot of people that listen to this are artists, they're management companies. Where's the best way for people to connect with you, either on socials or otherwise, to get a hold of you?
Yeah, sure. So I write a newsletter called Deep Cuts, which is about music marketing strategy.
And it's an excellent one. Yeah, it's really one of the best one out there. Yeah.
Thank you for that. Sometimes I write it just thinking it's, just going into the ether of the internet. So it's nice to hear people read it.
No, absolutely. Not only do they read it, but, people like me are getting their students to read it and to use it and to, illustrate marketing points. It's an excellent, excellent newsletter because you have such a deep and strong grasp on the concepts of not only marketing, but of the culture today, which is something that makes what you write about have such resonance.
Oh, thank you very much. Well, yeah, you can subscribe to that. Deep Cuts, you can find it on my Twitter, which is just at Amber Horsburgh. You can also shoot me an email, which is amber@deepcuts.co if you want to work together. If you're putting out a release and you want some, another set of eyes on it, I'm more than happy to help.
Okay, great. Amber, I can't thank you enough for taking the time to do this. I really, really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you for having me. It was great.
Yeah, it was wonderful. And it was so nice to finally meet with you and get this chance to, talk about so many of the concepts and things that, I've been reading about ever since you did ever since I discovered your original newsletter.
Oh, totally. Yeah, same to you.
And so, maybe when you're back in California, I'd love to call on you maybe to be a guest at my Musicians Institute class.
Yeah, sure.
That'd be great. And I hope you have a wonderful time in Mexico.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Amber.
What a great interview. What a really great interview. I have always had an
affinity,
a great affinity and love, and I love Amber because she's so bright.
Right.
She's so knowledgeable. She, just in listening to this, we all have been taken on a really deep dive into marketing from someone who has an innate sense of the totality of what artists today really need to understand about it. And I thought she had so many great points, beginning with the biggest mistakes that artists make, when you're marketing your stuff, so many artists think it's just about my music or it's just about me and my music. And she talked about the number one thing, if you recall at the beginning of our conversation, the number one problem is artists not having enough content.
And not investing in that content.
Yes.
And creating different pieces of content for different things and having that whole kind of lineage of going, from A through Z and having that all lined up. So as you start rolling it out, I always tell people, especially when it comes to the whole social media side, is that once you start feeding that animal, it cannot stop. It's like you're feeding a lion, constantly giving it meat, keep going. Once you start it, you can't stop it. So
that's right. And we come back to our adage again and again. What is the most valuable commodity in the world today?
People's attention.
That's right. What does content consistently do?
Get people's attention.
That's right. You, Eric, are the living example of that. What you have done with your band, Disciples of Babylon, and the approach and the consciousness that you have around this premise that she talked is so important, is around content and continually providing that.
Right.
When she talked about the role of video, a graphic designer is so important.
Having a graphic designer, having a camera guy or somebody in the band or project or somebody that's helping you that can be filming, BTS behind the scenes footage, anything in the studio recording, getting ready for a tour. There's so many things that you can create as far as pieces of content are concerned, and people love that. The fan loves that, particularly your super fans.
Absolutely. And not only is it content, I don't want to think of this just as, we're putting shit out there. That's not the point. The point is that when you spoke about those specific entities that you mentioned, those are things that really give a context to who the artist is.
Right.
Behind the scenes, giving them a sense of the band, giving them a sense of the purpose, giving them a sense of who the personalities are.
Exactly.
And how important that is in terms of binding artist and audience. Can't be emphasized enough. And how she talked about, with regards to this content element, how YouTube and Instagram were two of the most important. And
Correct.
The reason they were the most important,
because there's continual growth.
That's right.
They haven't maxed out. They have not, plateaued yet, kind of like Facebook and all the other platforms that have kind of gotten in there. There's still huge amount of growth in those areas. And
And one other thing that I want to mention, which I think is really important, and I don't want to let this slip by because she mentioned it almost in passing, but I think it's absolutely crucial because it's never talked about enough, is when she talked about content partnerships.
Right.
And she talked about, and
collaborations,
collaborations with people in other spaces.
Exactly.
Doing a thing with like a food network, doing a thing like what you were talking about with the music
Save the music.
That's like a totally different kind of space,
right?
But
it's getting yourself into another pool of people that may have never heard about who you are, and that's the whole point of these things. And I think another big point that she brought up that was really important was the frequency. Each of these social platforms, like we said, they're different animals unto themselves, and so you have to understand how each one works. And I think one of the things that she made, which was a great point, was frequency is incredibly important. So not only is it having your content batched and ready to go, meaning you have like 10, 20 pieces of content that you've created, but it's also when you're going to be doing that. YouTube once a week, maybe once every other week, you put that in there. Instagram, you want to do your stories, you want to try to have at least once a day a story going out there, an Instagram story or a post. So, each one of these things are different kind of frequencies. So I think that was a really, really important. And again, it's instilling the whole thing. What we've done with our band, we have these, it's a big thing like on Twitter, because Twitter happens to be our largest platform, right, where we have a lot of success. And, we have these things called, Motivational Mondays or Freedom Fridays that we've done. And so what's happened is a lot of people do post those type of things like Motivational Mondays, but what we do is we incorporate it with a picture or with a cool quote from one of our songs or whatever. But people have become to expect that on Monday morning to get that from us, and they're waiting for it. And it's starting to kind of indoctrinate the fan about certain things that are happening. So I think it's a really important point that she brought up, and critical to have success.
And it's also building a relationship with your audience.
Which is the ultimate thing in this entire thing that she's talking about, is building that entire artist-fan relationship. So.
It's crucial. It's absolutely crucial. And you had mentioned before about, the different platforms. That's a really important understanding. Knowing YouTube, knowing Instagram, knowing TikTok, and knowing the audiences for each.
Right.
As we've said before, social media is not generic.
It's not.
It's not generic. And don't ever think you will do your career a terrible disservice if you just think, I just got to get on all of them.
Right.
No, you don't.
Right.
And you need to really give that some serious thought.
Absolutely. And I think also the context of an act's music, especially when pitching playlists that she was talking about. And, I think reflecting on what's happening in culture is what she was saying, as far as that goes.
Very important. Some of the examples she was using of,
Pride Month.
Little Nas X and Pride Month, and tying that together, because she said one of the things that is so important, and why that's important for our listeners, is to understand that the DSPs and the people, behind all these streaming playlists and so forth, their number one thing is they want to be relevant to the culture and of the times now.
Exactly.
So you, as somebody who's providing content to that, Mr. and Mrs. Artist out there, you want to be sensitive to that.
Right.
Whether it's...
Or you may have a piece of music that would tie in perfectly with Pride Month or Black History Month. That's a great way to kind of get your music out there as well,
Or,
too.
looking at the election, or looking at, an event coming up, or, 4th of July, or holidays.
Tentpole holidays, tentpole movies, that type
absolutely.
of thing. Right.
That's an important component to keep in mind. Remember, it's not just about your music or about your song. It's about, the platforms and the context that you're putting all of this marketing time and effort into.
Hey Insiders, thanks so much for tuning into this episode. We really appreciate it. To get show notes, links, and everything that was mentioned during this interview, head on over to our official website at MUBUTV.com/podcast/show notes. If you're enjoying the content and what we're doing here on the show, please subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcast, Stitcher, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts from. And don't forget to rate and review our show over at iTunes. 5-star reviews are always welcome and help to ensure that our podcast stands out on the top rated and new and noteworthy charts on iTunes in our space. You can also find us on social media at Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, all ending with the handle MUBUTV, which is spelled MUBUTV. Don't forget to catch our flagship show, the MUBUTV Insider Video Series, airing every week on YouTube at youtube.com/MUBUTV. This show was produced and created by Ritch, Esra, Esra and Eric Knight. This show would not be here if it weren't for our amazing team, which are the following. Interview editors Sarah Nissenbaum and Alex Taylor. Show notes and transcriptions by Jani Chang, Nikoka Bodoglo, Lilia Owens, and Sarah Nissenbaum. Theme music by Disciples of Babylon. And be sure to tune in next week for another episode of the MUBUTV Insider Podcast.